If you're a guitar player, and if you're watching this channel, statistically you're already familiar with Meris. They are an LA-based effects pedal company that is something of a heavyweight in our industry, having brought some of the most interesting and boundary-pushing effects pedals of the last 10 years. And I always considered myself to be something of an early adopter when it comes to Meris. I picked up a Mercury 7 relatively soon after it initially released and made it almost too much of my personality as a guitar player for nearly half a decade. But today I want to do something different. I want to go back to the beginning because Meris did not start their company with the Mercury 7. And in fact, Meris didn't start their company with effects pedals at all. About 10 years back, Meris started as a company producing 500 series modules. The Mercury 7 500 series rack insert came before the pedal. And before that came their first ever release, the 440 microphone preamp. This mic preamp is not only the thing that launched Meris as a company, but I think it also is indicative of who they are as a brand from first principles, because they would say that this is very much a love letter to electric guitar with a variety of features on here specifically tuned for tracking guitars and using effects pedals. But as we will kind of demonstrate in this video, I think that it represents them as a company in the sense that this also goes beyond just a great guitar tool and instead transforms into a really great all-around music production piece of tech. So let's get into the broad strokes of what this preamp is. This is a American style designed to be very clear and transparent preamp. And for those of you not up on your preamp shorthand, you can kind of read American style as API voiced. And if you don't totally know what that means either, that's totally fine. Let's go really simplistic and broad strokes. You can kind of think of a lot of preamps as being voiced more API style or more Neve style. Now, this obviously excludes a lot of important nuance and categories, but you can kind of think of it as like guitars can kind of broadly be categorized as Fender or Gibson lineages. You can think of it the same way here. The 440 is kind of designed to be very API American preamp-esque. But there is a big focus on transparency and cleanliness in the preamp to a point. You can obviously drive this preamp very hard, and we will for some of the sound samples we're going to get into, but it is designed to be a very kind of flat and honest response, which can sound really, really great on guitars when you already have the sound you want, but it can also sound really great for things like this right here. I have recorded almost every single talk to camera vocal on this channel in the last several months through a Meris 440 preamp, including right now, because I don't want that overly colored and saturated sound of a Neve style preamp when I'm just talking to camera. That saturation can sound great on a sung vocal, but I don't love it when it's just supposed to be a conversational piece. So let's get into the actual feature set on the 440. You have a pretty simple set of controls here. You have your input gain, your output trim, and then a set of switches on here. You've got input and output transformers by Cinemag. The input gain is going to be up to 60 dB of gain, and the output trim is going to allow you to either boost by an additional 12 dB or cut by up to 27 dB to kind of make sure that you are not clipping your converters going into your DAW. And it's worth noting that both of those pots, both the gain and the output, are ahead of their respective transformers. So you can drive up that input gain and hit that input transformer harder for more color. And likewise, you can use that output trim to kind of step back or push harder into your output transformer. And that will have some really interesting consequences down the road. Along the right side of the faceplate, you have your utility tools, a 20 decibel pad useful for loud sources like guitar cabinets. You have a phase inverter and 48 volt phantom power for active mic sources. And next to that phantom power, you have a couple of creative things here. You have a high pass filter and a high shelf. The high pass filter is going to be a 12 dB cut at either 80 or 200 hertz, and the high shelf is going to be a 3 dB boost at either 4 or 7K. And both of those switches are very specifically tuned to be useful for tracking very album-ready sounding electric guitars. And below that, you have one of the most interesting features on this preamp, a send and return for an effects loop built into this preamp. And that can be used in a couple of interesting ways. You can use it to basically put wet effects or modulation effects after your guitars, amps, cabinets, and microphones, allowing you to get studio quality effects in your preamp, in your recorded guitar, or you can use it as a send and return in your DAW, allowing you to reamp stuff from your DAW and your project through effects pedals. Or lastly, you can use that return at the bottom as a high Z input for recording DI instruments like acoustic guitars or electric basses. The signal flow of the preamp has those EQ switches ahead of the effects loop. So if you are running something into your return DI input, it is going to go straight from your source into the output transformer, no other EQ or coloration happening, allowing you to get really great high quality transformer driven DI sends. So let's start with the most simple and straightforward application of these preamps. Let's go ahead and mic up an electric guitar cabinet and record some guitar. We're going to use my Gibson Les Paul into a Milkman Beekeeper 18-watt tube amp, mic'd up with a Soyuz 1973 condenser mic. We have the pad engaged on the 440 preamp so that we've got more room to play with both our input gain and our output trim. And we're just going to kind of play with some low gain and some high gain settings to see how much of that transformer color we want in our tracked electric guitar sounds. Now that we've found gain structure that we like for this electric guitar sound, let's go ahead and create a more finished and polished recording by engaging those two EQ shelves. Next up, let's make use of the effects loop in the 440 preamp to record in real time studio quality post effects. We're going to make use of the Keeley Halo Core and the Meris Mercury X for this next part, but we're going to do it with a twist. And that's because we are using two Meris 440s in our rack. We can actually use the left channel, send out of the effects loop to the mono input on the Halo, and then stereo out to the Mercury X, and then stereo out from the Mercury X to the returns on both preamps. Because those effects loops on the preamps are at the very end of the signal chain ahead of just the output trims, you will get perfectly level matched signal going into both of those returns, and you'll be able to match the levels using the output trims, giving you phase correct and perfectly centered dry guitar tones still, while also giving us access to massively wide, super clean stereo wet effects. Let's give it a listen. And while we're on the subject of that effects loop and that output transformer, let's go ahead and record some DI bass. I'm going to take my Jennings short scale bass and plug it directly into the high Z return on one of the 440 preamps, and then use the output trim to basically just drive into the output transformer, giving us an incredibly clean but appropriately colorful sounding DI. Next up, let's kind of mix and match and also showcase how valuable each of these different recording formats can be. We're going to go ahead and take a McPherson acoustic guitar, which are acoustics kind of known for their DI acoustic sound that I also really like mic'd up. So we're going to go ahead and take this AKG C414 and mic up the front of the acoustic guitar while also running the kind of piezo pickup direct into the high Z return on our other preamp. And so we'll record both of them in tandem. You'll hear the 414 mic'd up in front solo first, followed by the DI sound of the McPherson going into just the output transformer on channel 2. We will then blend the two together and then pan them out for like a nice, wide, rich, complicated sound. finally, let's go ahead and give a listen to the 440 preamps as a reamping solution. We've gone ahead and spun up a simple TR-909 drum machine loop in our DAW, and we are going to send it out through the 440 preamps for a little bit of transformer, preamp color, as well as being able to use it to reamp these drums through the Keeley Halo Core and the Meris Mercury X. Let's give it a listen.